Alex Terrace here, back with another review. This one was very in demand by several people, and it is a comparison between Clearlight Sanctuary 2 and the Sunlighten Amplify 2. So these two companies are a couple of the bigger sauna companies, infrared sauna companies in the industry, and they've always been probably each other's biggest competitors, just in terms of the amount of sales that both companies make historically. And if you don't know anything about me, I'm a researcher of wellness equipment. I'm an expert and I consult on 20-something different product categories, including saunas. And in this sauna category, I am a dealer as well for around 8 or 9 brands, forget what it is. So I sell many different brands. So if you want to email me with questions about whatever you're encountering out there and need some guidance, my email address is below in the description box of the video, and I respond 7 days a week, so don't hesitate. So, what are we going to break down here? So, Sanctuary 2, I'll give you a little bit of history and education here as we also do the comparison, because I like to make sure that consumers out there are very, very educated, because it takes a lot to discern some of these product categories and not be confused by marketing. And of course, the biggest challenge being that you can't really always see every little aspect of a piece of equipment up close in person, right? So you're trying to make a decision online, figure things out, and so that's what I do. So I'll try to give you some insights here. All right, so Clearlight, the Sanctuary 2, when it came out, it was really a response to Sunlighten and their sauna model called the M-Pulse. So Sunlighten has 3 different models. The one we'll actually be talking about today is the Amplify, but they also have another one called the M-Pulse, and technically the M-Pulse came out before the Amplify. The M-Pulse was announced in 2011 on the Dr. Oz show, and that was marketed as a full spectrum sauna. And the reason they did that is because they have 3 different types of emitters in there. Now they technically have 4. Well, we could still say 3, but I'll explain it to you. So they have an emitter in there that's for for the long wave far. They have an emitter dedicated to the mid-range of infrared spectrum, and they have a LED panel dedicated to near infrared, and now, came out some years ago, but also adding red wavelength. So they wanted to kind of boost their photobiomodulation effect. In terms of how that LED array is set up in the sauna, that currently is done correctly in terms of how it's administered to the body. So it's within 1 inch of the body, those LEDs. If it's really any further than that, I wouldn't say you're wasting your time, but we can talk about it another time. You can always reach out to me. Anyways, but we're not going to talk about M-Pulse, but I need to give you a little backstory because the full spectrum sauna was crushing it, and it still does in terms of sales. They were doing very, very well, very popular sauna, both in commercial settings and home. And Clearlight just had their Premier series and their Essential series, which basically just has their type of carbon emitter. It's technically a carbon with a little bit of ceramic dust, not dust, but like grains of ceramic mixed in. And they had the Premier and the Essentials for a long time. And the M-Pulse is just super unique. It's a very, very probably the most unique sauna on the market. And so they were not, they just wanted to compete, right? So eventually, Clearlight came out with Sanctuary 2. And they said, well, okay, what are we going to do? So we could add in the second type of heater, infrared heater, to the sauna. And that's what you're seeing here on the glass door. So if you look at the Essentials and the Premier models from Clearlight, you'll see that these, I call them shortwave high watt heaters. Those do not exist on the other models, only in the Sanctuary. And they decided to label them or refer to these types of heaters as, it says right here, right, full spectrum heating system. You see full spectrum here as well. When they say full spectrum, that's what they're referring to. They call them their full spectrum heaters. And Sunlighten was doing very well from a marketing standpoint, marketing and sales, with the whole full spectrum sauna concept. And so if you label and refer to some heaters in your sauna, your own brand, or their brand, as full spectrum, I'm sure you can understand how that would give you a little bit of a marketing and sales edge, right? Because now you're salespeople. Now you're advertising certain keywords on the internet with ads for full spectrum as well. Okay, so think about it, right? So you got Sunlighten Impulse. They were owning the space. They were owning that concept for a long time. Now they have a competitor, full spectrum. Somebody else is now talking about a full spectrum sauna. But is it the same? No. A Sanctuary and an Impulse from Sunlighten are very different saunas. But we're not comparing those, are we? And I also have an hour-long video on Impulse on my YouTube channel. If you have any trouble finding it, just let me know. Maybe I'll include in the description box actually below. I'll include the link there to the Impulse if you want to educate yourself. So really referring to these types of heaters, Clearlight was the first ones to incorporate these types of heaters, which had been in the industry, not the sauna industry, but out there used in a variety of commercial applications, including very identical technology to this, shortwave quartz types of filament heaters used in outdoor settings like outdoor heating. You ever been like a patio and feel that heat? Sometimes it is something like this, used for outdoor heating applications. Okay, so it is used for other things as well. So there are factories producing those for different purposes, and then Clearlight goes to them and says, hey, we want to throw those in our sauna. Okay, that's basically how it happened. And so they created something suitable for their sauna and then decided to call them full spectrum. But we really usually refer to them as like shortwave heaters, shortwave quartz heaters. Reason we refer to those as that is because the majority of their energy, so they say like each one of these is 500 watts, right? So the question you ask is that 500 watts, what is it converting to? Like the infrared spectrum, right? Is it a lot of near? Is it a lot of mid? Is it far? What is it, right? And when we ask that question about those, or for any type of heater for that matter, an infrared heater in a sauna, that's referred to as a spectroscopy report. And you can always request that from a company or a factory. And usually they'll give it to you. But basically in the case of these types of heaters, these heaters are great for producing a lot of shorter wavelengths like near infrared range and mid range. Do they produce a little bit of far long wave? Yes, they do. However, a very, very small percentage. So the majority of that 500 watts is mostly going to mid and near. Does that make sense? So when it comes to and by the way, if you see the term microns, like microns is a measurement of the wavelengths of infrared. So like long wave far, for example, have you ever heard the term far infrared sauna, right? That's what they're talking about. So that's referring to more around like 5.5 microns and higher, 6, 7, 8, 9, you get the idea, including decimal points, but going all the way up. And what types of heaters go the longest, right, into that far end of things? Carbon emitters. So if you ever see an infrared sauna, it's got a bunch of black panels on the wall. That's carbon heaters, if you don't know. And those go to, they start to kind of taper off, like the curve, if you will, if you look at the graph or the report. They start to kind of goes down around like 14 microns. Usually these types of heaters here, these high watt shortwave sort of heaters, they start to taper down. I mean, this is from memory. They start to taper down a lot, I think around like the 5 to 6 micron range. So get just a smidge into long wave. But again, so the majority of the infrared output is in mid and near with these guys. And then these true wave emitters, they refer to these on the walls, or carbon emitters that you see in saunas. They're kind of like almost like opposites. The carbons or the true wave, the majority of their energy, around 70-something%, will produce in the long wave far. And these are kind of the opposite. 70% plus is going to produce in the near mid, shorter range. So if you add these guys in on the front glass doors, is that a good thing? Yeah, I think so. Just from the perspective that their other models don't have any heaters on the front area here that are like high watt or anything like that. So adding a little more types of heat or infrared, sure, absolutely. Why not, right? Definitely better than not having it. That's how I feel about it. This is not the only company to incorporate these types of heater technologies. There might be like 5 other companies in the market, possibly 4 or 5. I will say that Clearlight and Sunlighten, with their Amplify, they use the tallest of these types of heaters. That is important. So that is a critique that I do make with some other brands that are using these. Sometimes they stick them in not the right areas. And then sometimes if you do see them on the front of the sauna, they're much shorter. They're much lower down. And I could swear from memory that when I was originally testing at a sanctuary, one person, that these heaters were about half the size as they are now. So I'm pretty sure these used to be like half the size. That was a long time ago. I mean, the last time I was in one was like 9 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe longer. I don't know. So it is nice to see they're taller now. But yeah, Sunlighten and Clearlight use the tallest of these types of heaters, which is good because you want more energy, obviously, coming into the sauna, and you want more of that to potentially reach your torso and your body, right? Versus being lower down, where most of it's going to hit the front of your calves. I mean, the front of your shins and knees. Does that make sense? So, is that enough of the backstory? No. What I will say is what is very confusing now to people is the term about full spectrum. So if the term full spectrum should be more like a term that's reserved for a heater that produces a very wide range from low to high. So if anything, the true wave heaters here, or carbon emitters, carbon heaters in saunas, those are actually more full spectrum. They're kind of like the most full spectrum types of heaters in the industry, versus like a ceramic heater or these types of heaters on the glass door. Again, like a carbon or a true wave is generally the most full spectrum, because again, it's covering many wavelengths from near, mid, and a lot of far. But as I already told you, remember that the majority, though, is in the far longer wave. So you saw that's already confusing, right? So don't be confused. It was just a company, and now some other companies as well, that decided to just use these keywords in a way, decided to use this phrase to refer to these types of heaters. And mainly that's just for marketing purposes, to compete with Sunlighten. Literally, that's how it all began. So that is now, so I'm talking to the people that are like really confused, and they're like, oh dude, the full spectrum, and I'm like, well, carbons are already full spectrum. They're like, oh my God, I'm so confused right now. So adding extra near and mid, yeah, as I said before, especially if it's on the front of the sauna, I think it's a good thing versus not. But can you do a better job? That's the question. Like, if you do use these, could you do a better design? And so Sanctuary was on the market for a long time. And then Sunlighten said, you know what? I think it's time. I think it's time that we compete with the Sanctuary directly. In other words, they were going to make their own superior version of a Sanctuary. That was the plan. They already produced the M-Pulse, which Sanctuary is not really like at all. So it was kind of an attempt to compete, but they couldn't. I mean, M-Pulse is just so different. And then Sunlighten came back full circle many years later and decided to say, hey, let's just one-up the Sanctuary. And that's basically literally the linear timeline of events of how that all played out. Okay, so how would you improve the design of this? Well, when it comes to these types of heaters, their wattage is great, and they're tall, so that's great. That's good. Nothing wrong there. If you notice the front of the sauna, looks great. It's beautiful. And part of that is because there's a lot of glass. So you see this little strip here. The door is there in the middle. And then you see that strip there and that strip there. Looks great. It really does. It looks great. If you, I'm not on the 2-person. Let me get to the 2-person here. So if you wanted just, a little bit more infrared intensity, just in terms of, I'm talking about the heat, by the way, the heat in the cabin, then you would use less glass. So in the case of the 2-person, you can see here, instead of there being glass on the side of the glass door, we see that it's wood, right? So I think that's a superior design, that one aspect there. And now you have to wonder, like, wait a minute, where are those shortwave high watt heaters, or full spectrum heaters as we call them? Well, what they did, instead of putting them on the direct wall or glass like Clearlight did, they built a separate standalone case for them. You see that picture right there? Actually, I can make it bigger. I just realized I can make it bigger. So now that's a lot clearer. So this is just one corner. We have one on the other corner as well. There's two in the sauna. There's actually three. I'll show you in a second. But so they, as you can see, they build their own little box for it here. And I got to double check this, but I think there might be two filaments in here. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. So there might be actually a little bit more intensity from the actual quartz heater or full spectrum heater versus what Clearlight's using. I think I see a separate coil in here, and I just can't remember from memory when I was in this thing. But anyways, regardless, the superior design is bringing it closer to the bench by mounting it on the floor in its own box. And then they put it in the corners, angled at you. You see how it's angled at the bench? Angled. I'm going to show you another really good photo. See this right here? This is as if you're looking out the glass door, and you see how it's on your left and right side, angled at you on the bench. That is the best way to get the maximum exposure to the type of infrared spectrum that's coming from these types of heaters. So that's a more superior design. Let's go back now to take a look on the back side here. All right. So here's as if you're sitting on the bench, right? And there is the heater there and there. And you can see that it's angled straight on, meaning that if you were the only one in the sauna, you would want to sit in the corner of the sauna so that you could be more directly in line with this, instead of sitting in the center and angling both at you like a V. Doesn't make sense. So you'd really want to sit over in the corner. Now, if you sit over in the corner in front of this one, you're far from this one, right? So this one's not that helpful, basically, because now you're quite far because you're in the opposite corner, sitting there. So just not quite as good a design. And let me back up here. All right, so can you see this in the photo? No, that's a reflection. That's not going to be a good photo. I'm trying to show you the third heater. Okay, it's not. Yeah, these are older photos. I'm going to have to scroll up here. All right, it's hard to see. I forgot to upload my better photo, so forgive me. But take a look right down here. You see where my mouse is circling? So see that's another high watt heater underneath the bench on the back wall. Makes a big difference. Because in version 2, model V2, which is what they're selling now, and I'm selling as well, is basically with version 2, with the addition of this extra heater, it allows the sauna to get to around 170 degrees. And it heats up faster as well. So, what does this sauna get to? The Sanctuary. The Sanctuary is able to reach a temperature of 140 degrees. 140 degrees is common. I'm just seeing if there's anything down here I want to chat about as I scroll down the page here. But yeah, 140 degrees is very standard across most infrared saunas on the market. Probably 98%, whatever it is. Some saunas go hotter. Very few do. Very, very few. Let's explore product features. Okay. No, yeah, it's not there. So if you are... So this is the way I kind of look at it. Some people do actually prefer a more intense sauna experience. Now, the goal of infrared versus a traditional sauna is that it doesn't usually need to be quite as high cabin temp because the infrared is penetrating the body and helping to warm your core body temperature, but it's definitely having an effect on the water and the blood because it's actually penetrating into tissues, the infrared heat, the light. So you don't necessarily need to have quite as high a cabin temp as a traditional sauna, which is usually like a convection stove. That said, some people still prefer to go to a higher temp than 140 degrees, or they want to heat up the sauna faster. So that's why the Amplify is a nice fit for that. And again, it's very rare to go past 140 degrees with an infrared sauna. There is another one out there, and I think it does like 150, 155, which is also very uncommon. So that's with version 2. So that I really like that, because it's also something that sometimes you want to mix your settings up with sauna instead of doing the same thing all the time. Challenge your body differently, different stress factor. And also, your body does get conditioned once you start doing a lot of sauna over several months. If you're doing a fair amount of sessions per week. And once your body gets conditioned, it is kind of nice to sometimes turn up that intensity. Does that make sense? It's it's not ideal to go to the gym or work out and do the exact same exercise or workout every single time for the rest of your life. It's definitely better than not exercising. It's way better, But ideally, you would kind of change things up a little bit, and then you can continue to get more benefits. So if you're going to have the sauna for a long time, which you should, and you're going to use it for many years, it's nice to have that extra temp. And if it's not just you using the sauna and somebody else wants to use it, then friends, family, whatever, they might have different preferences than you, right? They might say, oh, I really like it when it's 160. You're like, okay, great. I hate it. I feel like I'm going to pass out. So I keep it at 130, So everybody can have their preferences. And when it comes to the high watt heaters, if you were wondering, the ones on the corners here, you can separately control those and shut them off. So if it's ever if you just want a more mild sauna session, or you're just somebody that doesn't, your partner or whoever, your friend, whatever, they really like it more intense and you don't, you can dial it back further, and you can actually shut off these high watt heaters, full spectrum heaters, and you can just use the carbons on the wall. Now, let's talk about the other types of emitters in the Sanctuary and the Sunlighten. So, with Sunlighten, one interesting thing, just as a company research, do a little digging on the patents that Sunlighten has registered. It's very eye-opening. All of their innovation around their product development that is unique as well. Take a look then at the patents on Clearlight. It's very eye-opening. That's all I will say. Just look back and forth and compare. Now, aside from that, almost every sauna company in the market, they don't have any patents, just so you know. And if they do have patents, which is rare, I'm talking about other companies, it's usually on things that are more about aesthetic features, things that kind of preserve a brand identity for marketing purposes. Does that make sense? So it's just kind of a way of preventing, it's more of an aesthetic feature type of marketing thing, and not so much about an innovative feature that's correlated to a difference in therapeutic efficacy. Does it make sense? So with Sunlighten, they have more patents than any other company around true innovation, product development, connected to features correlated with therapeutic efficacy or different effects that can kind of change your experience in the sauna and your health. So they have the patented carbon emitters. It's unusual, but this company actually manufactures every single part in their sauna. They own their entire supply chain. No other company does that, just so you know. So their quality control can be a little bit higher because of that. But they have patented their carbon emitters on the walls. They're referred to as solo carbons. That's a trademark. And they have achieved a 99% emissivity rating. That's third-party validated. If you want to see it, let me know. Most companies, well, I think every other company basically that has a carbon heater on the wall, they're just getting it from a third-party factory, and it's not special or anything like that. And their emissivity level is lower, so they've reached the top, the pinnacle, Sunlighten, with a 99% emissivity rating. Emissivity, you can look up that term, but it is basically an important way to do a comparison between emitters, infrared emitters, and say, oh, this one's better for this reason. You know, this one's better at this infrared output versus this one. And that's a great way, specification-wise, you can make an actual comparison. So like if you were comparing two cars and you're like, oh, this one has a better fuel economy. Get what I mean? So miles per gallon, it's useful when you're comparing. If something's like 14 miles to the gallon, you're gonna be like, this sucks. Like, what is this car from like 1990? You know what I mean? 1985. Like, what's the deal here? You know, and you could basically know something, right, about the efficiency, the engine, things like that, because of the miles per gallon efficiency. So you got to think about that the same way. If you're trying to make a comparison between these heaters on these walls to these heaters on these walls of this brand, that would be one important specification test. And I will just say something interesting, that some companies don't have any problem showing their third-party emissivity test when you request it. Some companies won't show you, will not show you their emissivity test. So that is something just good to know about. What else can I say about true wave heaters here? So you can't tell from the photos, but they built this kind of semi-permanent backrest kind of cover on the wall with the wood slats. And the reason they built it onto the wall like that, in that way, is partially because they actually, with adhesive, glue the true wave heaters, the panels, onto the walls directly that you see there. They just paste it right on top. With the Sunlighten, and actually several other brands, they are cutting into the wall a frame, and they're recessing the carbon emitter into the wall. Can't tell from the photo, right? Looks almost the same, right? But actually, if you remove that cover, this cover here, you would see that actually the carbon emitter is like recessed into the wall. They do not recess into the wall. This requires more construction and more cost to do. And other companies do that as well. Some paste them onto the walls, like these guys, because it's cheaper to do. And that's something that you can kind of look into as you go into every little detail of a sauna, like where is a company trying to save money to produce a sauna for less. And if you start to notice a tendency with that with the sauna company, you should start to question everything, right? What are they, there's a lot of different components, right? There's a lot of parts that go into a sauna. So if a company is really all about margins, like how focused are they on building the cheapest sauna? Does that make sense? Like how committed are they to getting the best margin possible? And so when that is kind of it's an important part of business for sure, different companies, different sauna companies will have to choose and select with their component what the quality is of the grade. So like with some electrical component, let's just say, or even like a wire, okay, there's going to be like, I don't know, I'm just giving you an example, like a good, better, best, maybe like 4 or 5 different options. So there's certainly going to be wire that's the most expensive, and there's going to be wire that's like so cheap, it potentially could be a fire hazard or produce a lot of EMF, electrosmoke. You get what I'm saying? It's at the bottom. A lot of companies, by the way, go with the cheapest wire, just so you know, cheapest wire. So there's a little bit of fire risk sometimes, stuff like that. But anyways, so companies are always making that decision on every component part. Should we go with the cheapest, or where should we go in between? And then they kind of correlate that to their warranty term as well. And also it has to do with how much of their mass, are they using a third-party factory to mass manufacture their sauna? There's a lot of variables, honestly. So when it comes to something like this, if you can investigate sauna up and close in person, you can kind of see if something is cheaper than another brand. You're welcome to always reach out to me and ask me questions about that sort of thing. One other area where you can save costs, and a lot of companies do this, you see the roof here on the sanctuary? So if you notice so I'll describe it to you. I do have a video, by the way, where I am climbing on a ladder and taking a look at the top of the sanctuary. It's an old video, like a long time ago. Anyways, most sauna companies, they'll have like, let's say it's mahogany or basswood as the wood types here. So you'd have obviously mahogany or basswood boards on the ceiling here. And then on the outside, you'd have plywood or Luan wood. That's, God, it's at least 85% of saunas, maybe more. Brands do that. And it's very, very thin plywood on the exterior. The boards are usually pretty thin too. And let's go to the Amplify here, and you can see that little roof piece here. You see that? The lip that overhangs the wall. That is a very solid roof cap that sits over all the walls. And because it's a pretty solid roof cap, it is able to trap and hold in heat that rises. Doesn't heat rise, right? So if it just basically is able to hold in heat a little bit better. So Sunlighten does that on all the models of their sauna. And I think it's important. It costs them more money to do it. In terms of now wood type, wood quality, there's the grade of the wood, there's the type of cut of the wood. Also, are they matching the boards side by side by hand? A lot of companies don't do that because it requires more labor for somebody to actually match the boards so it looks nice aesthetically. Very few companies do that. But you got to look into the grade and the cut and the thickness of the boards. And that's also where you see companies cutting corners. Nobody in this industry currently, well, there's some custom companies that do when you get custom sauna stuff, they're minimum $10,000, really more like $15,000 plus. 25 is usually where you find them, plus higher. And they're using sometimes some companies really nice wood. But if you're not getting a custom, really expensive job, prefab saunas, Sunlighten uses the best wood qualities that you can literally on the entire market right now. The two reasons they're able to do that is, one, they're just doing very well as a company. They're a large company and they make a lot of money and they do a lot of sales internationally. Number two, though, is they built their own factory in Vietnam. So they're saving money by manufacturing there. But Vietnam is very well known for designing luxury furniture, wood furniture for less. So if you want basically really, really nice wood furniture, but don't want to spend a fortune, Vietnam is really good at that stuff. So they get a lot of really nice wood importing or passing through Vietnam all the time. So if you would just want access to great wood cheaper, it's already there. You get what I mean? So, and then their factory is literally there as well. Okay, so over time, when you first start and open up a factory, your costs are quite high. But over time, you can improve your margins. And so that's what they've done. So basically, nobody uses better wood than them. Other companies could, but it would eat significantly into their margins. If they didn't want to, they'd probably really have to do the same thing. They'd have to basically make a factory closer to the source in Vietnam as well to really compete. So most companies will never be willing to match their wood quality just because, it's just going to totally eat into their margins a lot. The other thing, by the way, is a lot of sauna companies use third-party factories to make their saunas. Some companies will lie when you ask them too, by the way. But the way that you can find out if they're lying or not is you can say, what is the name of your factory? What's the address? And if they don't tell you, you should be a little suspect. But basically, then you can look up that factory and see literally if they're telling the truth. Is that manufacturer manufacturing for other brands? What are they doing? Or does that company truly own that factory? So that's all I'm saying, man. Some will say, oh, yeah, it's our own factory. Well, do your due diligence. Is that a deal breaker if they don't have their own factory? No, but it's just one of those things you ask, right? Because you're kind of checking, you're trying to get a sense of a company, right? If they're willing to lie to you or cut corners, use cheaper stuff, right? So that's one. But with quality control and potentially getting better margins so you can produce a better sauna, of course, it's ideal if a sauna company could potentially own their own factory and control every aspect of the process. Eventually, over time, they could possibly then be the most competitive. And so that's basically what Sunlighten did. But it's always a gamble. When you first do it, it's a very competitive industry. So to make your own factory and kind of do it all yourself and own your supply chain, like nowadays, that would be it would be risky. And you'd have to have a lot of money to start the business and compete. A lot of money. And you might break even, most likely you'd fail. So you may not know this, a lot of warranties are about 7 years, because statistically about 60% of sauna companies go out of business. 60%, could be higher now, I don't know, within 7 years. So if you are looking at any other sauna companies and they are younger than 7 years, you should just avoid it. I'm already looking at all the brands out there. Trust me, there's nobody that's come out that's younger than 7 who's like, hey, we redid a sauna and it's better than anything. Like, we reinvented sauna and it's superior to anything else. No, actually, I wish that was the case. I would probably make a video about it, but no, that actually doesn't exist. So they're just a younger company and basically more likely to go out of business, in the near future. So just do not buy from a company that's younger than 7 years. It's a good rule of thumb, regardless of how good their marketing is. Anyway, so the TrueWave 2 heaters, last thing I'll say about their heaters is they make a lot of interesting claims about their heaters. But remember, as I always say in all my videos with any product, claims should always be backed up, right? So if somebody says, we have a superior bicycle tire, right, than the previous bicycle tire on whatever, you would be like, okay, well, why is it superior? But just remember, that's tricky because if if you don't know, sometimes the answer that you get sounds really convincing. And if you don't kind of know, then how to do a follow-up question, you might be convinced. But I like to err on the side of sticking with industry standards, like emissivity, in terms of measuring heater. So when it comes to mixing ceramic with carbon, with these TrueWave heaters on the walls here, one very important thing I could tell you that would help you discern is the difference between heaters that are producing a different amount of the spectrum. So more far or more mid or more near or this or that. The difference in their output when it comes to the actual. So what was I saying? Ceramic, carbon, and mixing ceramic powder with carbon in the case of a TrueWave. Here's something interesting to note, is that the average surface temp of these panels, whether it's a TrueWave or a carbon emitter, is around 185 surface temp. A ceramic gets much, much hotter, 400 to 700. So what's the difference? The difference is in, one, emissivity, which I mentioned before. That's one way you can compare, and hopefully you have some third-party tests, right, from the factory or another organization talking about that. The other one is the amount of energy that goes to a specific portion of wavelengths. So in the case of ceramic, they get to a hotter surface temp, which means that it produces a larger amount of mid and near and a little bit of far long wave. A carbon emitter is a much cooler surface temp, therefore produces a larger amount of far long wave and less of mid and near. So the correlation to the output of the ratio, if you will, right, between the infrared spectrums, that is connected specifically to the surface temp. So that's a really important thing to note. So in other words, if you add ceramic dust and you add that to carbon, and let's say this surface temp of this then gets to the TrueWave 185 degrees, that's just one example. Doesn't really matter what the surface temp is in my example here, but let's say it gets 185. That's going to be the identical spectrum output as any other carbon emitter on the market. Let's say there's a ceramic emitter that gets to only 185 degrees as well. the infrared wavelengths, the spectroscopy, so the wavelength distribution, all the different wavelengths mapped out and measured, is going to also be identical to the true wave and the carbon because it's correlated to the surface temp. And I also told you to look for, if something is superior, to look for the emissivity rating. Now that you know all this stuff, you can now easily look into true wave heaters. And you can do your own due diligence on what they say about them. Now that I told you the most important facts about heaters. All right. Anything else? No, we talked about the hotter cabin temp that this gets to over here. We talked about the wood, the 3 different emitters in there, the superior design of the emitters. And yeah, I think that's about it. If you want the best price on Sunlighten, as an independent dealer, I do offer the best price because that's what independent dealers can do, just so you know, or brokers or things like that. So with any type of product in any industry category, I mean, if you always want to get best price, you should try to ideally seek out a dealer or a distributor or something like that, because they can hypothetically give you the best price if they want to, versus going direct to a company. So you can reach out, and if you have questions about other brands, and I do sell other brands, we can talk about other things that are out there. Ultimately, I just want to help you figure out, right, what's going to be the right model specifically for your set of needs. Whether that's a commercial location or just at home or for your family or whatever. And we can talk that through. Sometimes I will even tell a person, you know what, if this is your budget, I would not prioritize a sauna. I would actually buy something else, a different modality. So I'm pretty unbiased. So I'm a good person to talk to because in some cases, sometimes I say, look, sauna is amazing. It is. You should definitely own one. But I would maybe put it second or third on your list or whatever, and prioritize this other modality, this other type of equipment. So I have a very broad knowledge, so I'm not just a guy trying to push you into a sauna, which literally anybody else you talk to, that's generally what they will do, because they just sell saunas only, if that makes sense. And most people you talk to sell specifically one brand, or they might sell 2 brands, but I sell many brands. So that would make me technically in this industry the most unbiased person that you could talk to. And so I'm going to give you more of a consultative, transparent answer. Anyways, that's it for now. Please like and subscribe to this video. It really helps a lot. And share it if you think other people could benefit as well. And that's it.